Real estate meeting will come to order. Roll call.
Counselor Kilby. Counselor Lee.
Here.
Counselor Pelletier.
Here. Council Kilby, the call is up that he's got a client and he's gonna try to make the meeting as soon as he can get done. So, we'll have to excuse him and welcome Trot Lee to the Real Estate Committee, your first meeting.
Thank you.
Well dressed, you're looking good.
I do my best.
Okay, pursuant to the old meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting to any media attendees are therefore advised that such recording and transmission are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and deemed acknowledgeable and permissible. We have a 3-minute input time, and we got a few people signed up. Peter Belanger, from Newport. We'll have to waive the rules. We have a motion to waive the rules? Council?
Motion to waive the rules.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
And the other guy, Rich, oh, no. Ellison Silva, and he's from Fall River, so it's all set. So, Peter, want to come down, and Alexander? There's a Preservation Society?
Yep.
Yep.
Preservation Society of Fall River.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, you can give your name and address again to be on
Okay.
record.
My name is Peter Belanger. I'm a former lifelong resident of Fall River. I currently reside in Newport, but I'm still a dedicated Fall River volunteer. Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay.
And my name's Alex Silva, 649 Alden Street, on the Board of Directors of the Preservation Society of Fall River as well. Alden, 649.
Okay, I don't know how long your presentation is.
I was going to keep it really brief, try within the 3 minutes.
Okay, who wants to go first?
I'm just here for support.
Oh, okay.
We're here for, of course, the NB Board and School and our
Yeah.
concerns and interests with that, and I'll let Alex take over from
Okay,
here.
no problem.
Yeah, so I submitted earlier just some document material just
Yeah,
to
we have it.
kind of back up everything I'm saying and just for your own reading at your own leisure. But essentially, the Preservation Society of Fall River respectfully like to request that the city withhold any demolition permit for the NB Boarding School at 75 Morgan Street. And this is until the conditions of the property's 2012 sale can be verified. So back in October 2019, we submitted a public records request to the city for the purchase and sale agreement of the building with the city and TA Restaurant, the current owner. The city failed to produce the document for us. They couldn't find it. We spoke to Judge Macy. He said he couldn't find NB Board and he couldn't find Healy School anywhere. So we haven't found the purchase and sale agreement, and the city doesn't have it either. So the reason that's important is because similar purchases of historic schools at that time, 2012, we'll use the Osborne School as an example because the 2012 Real Estate Committee actually had the meeting about both of them at the same time, so it's a good example to just kind of compare how the process should have been followed and what actually happened. So if you look at the Osborne School purchase and sale agreement, it lists conditions of sale that line up with the RFP that the city initially issued. And this included protections for the building to ensure that the redevelopment projects actually went forward. And there were things like even a $100,000 performance bond, stuff like that, just to help secure the city's best interests. And so, sorry, the reason that we're asking that you kind of hold on the demolition permit is just so we can find that purchase and sale agreement to ensure that it didn't have the same conditions of sale that it was supposed to have on it, mainly being that there was a project timeline with established benchmarks for the redevelopment of the Bourne School as with the owner's original proposal.
And to meet the criteria of the RFP, which was, as you know, I was involved in the purchase of the Cortland School. And that one had a little bit of hiccups, although that building's still being saved at this time. But I believe there's a strong coordination between the RFP and the P&S, Purchase and Sales Agreement, request for proposals and the purchase and sales for the facility. And that was quite a bit of a search for that P&S for the NB boarding school, which still to this date has
Hasn't
been
been found.
unavailable.
Yeah, we've been trying to locate it with the closing attorney, but we haven't been successful so far. But the Osborne purchase and sale agreement included the timeline of 36 months, so 3 years for that full redevelopment to be finished. So if we were looking similar to NB Borden, that would be well past its limit. And we previously submitted to the city, and I think it was after the last time we met with the Real Estate Committee in July on this matter. We kind of went through all the public records, like open meetings and stuff like that, news articles, and kind of put together a timeline of the whole sale with the NB Borden School. And there's just a lot of glaring inconsistencies that I won't get into now, but there's just a lot you can kind of work from that would raise suspicion as to what is actually in this purchase and sale agreement. And I'd like to just read you a piece of the purchase and sale agreement for Osborne School. It's under item 28, section D, and it goes forth to say that if the owner doesn't complete the redevelopment project as agreed with the RFP and the city shall have the right to seek injunctive relief from a court of competent jurisdiction, it being agreed that time is of the essence and the damage to the city from failure to perform the buyer will cause great and potentially irreparable damage to the public interest. So we still think that holds true for NB Borden School, and we would just like some time to locate that purchase and sale agreement, and we ask that the demo permit not be issued until we can ensure that everything's squared off.
All right, we'll talk about it in a little bit when it comes up. I have a few things to say, and we'll let you know what's going on.
Very good. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
councilors.
Richard Ballo? Flooding, yeah. Talking about flooding?
Flooding. Since
Flooding.
2010, I've been talking about this. So I figured. Richard Barlow, 50 Anderson Street. I don't know if I don't complain enough, or I don't make enough of noise. I don't know what it is. But I notice a lot of other areas, they're fixing these flooding areas. Now I just see this one here for Whitefield Street. So I just want to know when or if my flooding area is going to get repaired. Now, they're putting 4 more houses right up the street from me, and where's all that water runoff going? Right down to my property. So, back in 2011, when they approved the first house to be put up, I was told by the conservation that they're gonna put drainage down there, and they're gonna put piping down there to resolve the problem. As of today, not one piece of pipe, and not one drainage.
All right, why don't you give us
So-
the area and
Anderson Street.
Anderson Street
But-
and,
So, when we have winters, this is what I deal with winters. I mean, that's coming out of my walkway, and then it's nothing but solid ice, flooded.
Where's Anderson Street? Where is it?
Anderson's off of Dickerson Street.
Oh, okay.
It's right near the cemetery out that way.
So the problem is, when the winters come, a lot of times the plow trucks come down there, and if it's another guy that doesn't really do the area, I gotta go down there and talk to the guy, because if not, they block it up, and then what happens, it floods my house out again. So this is what happened one year that they did it, they had to bring a machine down there to open it up. Now, if I can't get down there with, my snow blower to make a path down there, it floods, because the water can't go nowhere, it just stops. Because they never put the drainage in like they said they're gonna do. They dug a trench in, the water department did a few years ago, and that did nothing. It's pretty much overgrown again, and it's filling in, because everything comes downhill, so it's just filling it back in. But, you know, as you can see, it's not like just the first time it flooded.
Who you talk to about it?
I don't remember, I know Terry Sullivan was involved,
Okay.
and it went to the full council, went to a committee, went to the full council, it was sent to the administration, and nothing was ever done. It was unanimously voted on by the council to have something done about it, and as of today, nothing's been done about it.
All right, let us,
But, you know, they keep buying up property around, you know, in other areas. There's a lot right across the street from me that, you know, they could buy that out and clean that up and use that for, you know, to retain some of the water.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not fair for me. I'd love to remove that flooding insurance that I have on my house. And that's, you know, it's not a pretty penny for flood insurance. I'd like to get rid of it, and I got documentation stating that my house isn't in a flooding zone, but because of the water runoff, that's where it is. And where the big problem is Sucker Brook Stream, where it broke through back in 2010, and it's never been repaired.
Yeah.
Back in 2010, if the Flanagan administration fixed the problem and took the money from FEMA, then it would have been fixed. The government would have paid for it. But now here I am still, you know, trying to support my family and paying for flood insurance, paying my regular insurance. My taxes keep going up, flood insurance keeps going up. And I just want something done about it.
This was in 2010 that they voted unanimously?
No, this was, probably 3 years ago.
So, like 2017, 16?
Yeah, something like that.
all right, we'll.
But I got plenty more pictures if you want to see them. I mean, I got,
That's enough.
that's enough? You sure?
You wanna leave some here, or?
Please,
Want 'em?
it's okay. You can leave it.
All right, and, we'll see what we can do.
Okay, maybe a big sponge down there or something? SpongeBob Big Pants, I don't know, you know, just to try to absorb the water?
I'll go down and see you.
Okay,
Get his phone number.
774. I work until 5, until 4. I get home at 4:30, because I work out of the city.
No,
So,
that makes
make sure it's
supper
not
at 4,
before
I'll
that.
be ready at 5.
I'll make chow mein sandwiches.
Oh, we'll go.
Thank you.
All right, I think what I'd like to do is, see if we can stall some time. Maybe, Council Kilby will be here. So if I can have a motion to take number 4 out of order, that would be nice. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta do the minutes of the meeting first. A motion to accept the minutes of the meeting?
Motion to accept.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'd like to take number 4 out of order. Discussion of possible, huh? What? To what? To what?
First and second,
Oh, I thought we done that. Motion made, I second it.
That was to,
for the minutes.
Oh, for the minutes,
Yeah.
okay. Motion made, I second it, and all in favor? Aye. All set?
So number 4.
Okay, a motion to take 4 out of order?
motion to take forward order.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's the MB Boarding School, table 715-209. You wanna, you anything to say on this right away? You want me to go first?
So, just going by the information that was given to us by the two gentlemen that came to the floor for citizens' input,
Mhm.
it was established that there were a lot of efforts made to have meetings. The owners of the TA restaurant were not showing up to these meetings. And then you had a discussion with them, and you said that they feel as though it would be $3.5 million
Yep.
to do what they need to do for that property and make it into an apartment building. My question is, and then they said that it was gonna cost $100,000 to knock it down and make it into a parking lot, correct? With all that's going on right now,
It's probably gonna be more than that.
That's what I mean.
besides the point.
have the owners put together any
Well,
measures or anything, or any kind of receipts, or any kind of surveys, or anything at all, like officially, that says how much it's gonna cost to knock it down in comparison to building the property? Has there been any of that? Because I didn't see anything.
all right, I talked to Mr. Santos a couple of days ago. The building inspector was down there, and they were taking a lot of the contents out of the building. And what the building was storing people's furniture when they move, and they leave it in there. So he had that for 3-4 years maybe. And Frank went down, he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm moving everything out. We're getting ready to demolish the building." He's going for permit sometime this week or next week. And, he says he couldn't afford $3.5 million for the apartments that he said he was going to do. And, that's it, that's what he's want to do. I think the 6 months are over, and he's going to apply, and he wants to knock it down. He didn't make the last meeting because he didn't want nothing to do with it, because it was too much money. So I can understand where he is. You ain't gonna spend money that you don't have.
So where did he get the 3.5 million figure from?
You get the 3.5 or 3.1 from the architects. You have it here
Okay.
in your package, what he was gonna do, and it's just way out of whack. He can't afford it, he doesn't wanna do it, and that's where it stands. SciTech
Okay.
is in there, and that's what's gonna happen. That's why he didn't intend.
Now, did he, or did they do any kind of, do we know if there's asbestos in the building?
Absolutely.
Right, so we know that, and then we know how much, well, we've been seeing with the King Philip situation, how much it's costing people to have to ship the asbestos out to. Was that factored into the $100,000?
He knows he has to take the asbestos out. And I told him, be careful what you're doing. Make sure you got a professional, stay out of their way, let him do the job and do it right. I don't know what he's gonna pay for it, but it's gonna be done the right way. The asbestos crew will not go in there unless the building is completely empty. They go in, they take all the asbestos out, whatever it's gonna cost them. I don't know if it's $100,000, $150,000, I don't know. But the fact is that he can't afford to do it, that he's doing the best he can. It's gonna cost him money, get rid of the asbestos. He took 25 dumpsters of furniture out there, and he still got, he said 5 or 6 more, because they were using it for storage. So that's where he stands, and he stands fast. He owns the building. He owns the building, but he does not have the 3.1 million to do what he wanted to. So, the best thing he can do is, do what he wants to do, knock it down. I'd like to see it preserved, you just can't do it.
Is there is there anything that the city can do, the fact that they don't have the purchase of sale? Or they don't have the record?
Well, I don't know, I got a lot of paperwork here. I'm sure it was done right. He's got a proposal, and we sold a few schools the same way. I'm sure they didn't deviate on this one. I think we done it right.
So-
If you think, or they think we done something wrong, well, let them bring it up, or, get,
I think they just want to see what obligations that were agreed to when the purchase of sale was made.
you wanna come down?
I just wanted to say that we're not accusing of your wrongdoing.
Yeah.
We're saying that the attorney hasn't been able to find it.
Okay.
We're looking at that as comparison. We're not accusing anybody.
I don't know if this is the package you're looking for. I can give you this one here, if you want it. Cost proposal, sale of school. I mean, I've got this for 5,000 if you want this. You got one of these up there? There we go, one there.
They got the cost proposal, that's in the packet.
You got that?
Yeah,
Oh, what you want?
That's how much you bought it for.
Yeah.
And even on this document, I believe, and somewhere in these documents, I know I read it before, it does say that they have intention to preserve the property, preserve the structure of the building and explore residential, professional, living workspaces. So since they couldn't do that, since they determined that, I just think that we need to see that document to know exactly what was agreed upon. I mean, just
Well-
personally, me.
Oh, this is, Mary Hardy's coming down. Hi, Mary.
Hello, good afternoon, how are you?
Good, you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Good. So at this particular point, I didn't know that the purchase and sale was being sought after, so I'd like to go meet with Corporation Counsel to make sure that it's not available. I actually texted him while this discussion was going on, to make sure that it's not available. In addition, I'd like to pull the deed to be sure that the deed doesn't have any restrictions on it.
Okay.
So I think before you
It's
act
just
any
due diligence. I
further,
think it's smart to do
I
that.
think we need to do some further investigation with regard to this particular sale.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, we can do that, keep everything on the up and up. So if we can have a motion to table this.
Motion to table.
And a motion, make sure that we have all the paperwork.
I will look for it tomorrow and get back to you as soon as I can find something.
So motion to table.
All right, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we got the addresses from Peter and the other one, right? Whatever we find, we can, yeah. We'll send you the findings, all right? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Huh? Yeah. Resolution discussing no, I'm gonna wait in case he shows up. Inventory of the city-owned property for sale. We have Matt Thomas, Mary Sahadi, I think. Yes.
Oh, let's,
Yeah, we need a motion to take it out of order.
Motion to take it out of order.
Number 5, second, all in favor? Aye.
so council, included in your packet today is a
We're gonna need
current.
Matt's name, just.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Matthew Thomas, 4 Park Place, Suite 101, New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Motion to waive the rules.
Second, all
All in favor?
in favor? Aye.
02740.
Certainly. So what you have in front of you that Mr. Thomas, Attorney Thomas prepared is a current list of the tax possessions. I believe that was asked for. There are not a lot of pieces of property on this list, but whatever questions you might have, Attorney Thomas would be happy to answer. In addition, you have a packet for the improved land of the city that he has also put together for you or for use at this meeting. So I'm going to let
Which I can review.
Attorney Thomas review these documents with you.
Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. When we were requested to come, the request was for city-owned property, so I wasn't sure if you were talking about tax possessions or city-owned property. So we're giving you both sets of documents.
Okay.
That's good.
Oh, so the tax possessions that Mrs. Sahadi mentioned, these are parcels that were foreclosed for non-payment of real estate tax, and so now the city holds them as tax possessions. They're not true municipal property because they have no intrinsic value other than they represent taxes that weren't paid. So they're different than a police station, a fire station, government center, a school.
Or something like capital.
Exactly, where it has an intrinsic value because of the service it provides. As such, we're, under the law, in the Chapter 60, Section 77B, Mrs. Sahadi is the custodian of tax possessions, and we can sell these at auction. And when we do sell them at auction, we try to get as much as possible, but the goal is to put them back on the tax rolls. So when you see the tax possession value on these parcels, these are not the assessed values. These are what was outstanding on taxes on these parcels when we foreclosed them. The majority of what you see on this list is vacant land. A lot of it is wetland. I'd like to direct your attention down toward the bottom of the list, 3 up from the bottom, 34 North 7th Street. This was the Apostolic Tabernacle on 7th Street that was demolished after the city acquired it, and there's a little urban garden there right now that the neighborhood was handling. So that's theoretically a vacant piece of property, but that is a tax possession. That's on the...
Is that the Bank Street Neighborhood Association?
Yes, that's who's handling it. Okay. So that's 3 up from the bottom. 2 up from the bottom, 158 Bedford Street. That's the old police station, which has some interest in it apparently again. On the next page, at the top of the list, 161 Graham Road. That's the old Newchrome facility. That parcel has had a substantial amount of response from the EPA and the DEP. There still are some contamination issues out there, but there's interest in that as well. And then if you go down 4 parcels to 755 King Philip Street, that's the, it's a old bar on the corner there. I believe the Sidewinders were in there at one point. in
Yeah,
time.
Rockin' Horse Pub.
Yeah, and so those are the 4 structures. Aside from that, it's all vacant land that we have tried to convey in the past, tried to put up for sale, and there really wasn't any interest in it. Mayor Coogan has asked that we look at this again to see if there is interest again in selling these. And we're also sending this list over to the planning department and to community maintenance to see if they need it, and over to engineering to get input from them. If nobody seems to need it for a municipal purpose, then there'll be another conversation about trying to sell it. The other 2 lists that I gave you are, let's look at this first one here. It's the one with the pictures. So this comes right out of the assessor's record. So Land Use Code 931 is the Department of Revenue and Land Use Code for property that's owned by the city council that is improved land. So these are true municipal properties. What I've done for these here, there are 7 of them, is I've given you a copy of the picture of the property along with the area, the book and page it came in, and the assessed value for this year. This first one at 190 Kempton Street, it's a mobile home. I'm really not even sure what this is. I haven't had a chance to really follow up and look at it, but it's a mobile home at 190 Kempton. The second one at 23 High is a building that I think is being leased to SER Services. And then the remainder of the properties on the page all will look very familiar. Government Center obviously is there. On the second page, Pond Street, this looks like it's a comfort station or something. I'm not really sure exactly what that is. And then parcel 5, 6, and 7 are the garages. So these are parcels that I'm not sure that you would want to sell, with the exception of maybe number 1 and 2. If you did want to sell these are not tax possessions. These would have to go out through an RFP.
Am I wrong in believing that there's some repairs that need to be made on?
On 1 and 2, I
Yeah.
think on 1, it's pretty obvious that
Yeah.
something has to happen there.
Definitely.
Number 2, I'm really not sure. Again, after conversation with Mayor Coogan and with Mrs. Sahadi, what we're looking to do is, we're going to be referring all of these over to planning and the other departments to have them take a look at, get some input from them, and then hopefully we can report back to you on what they have to say. The last list that you have, I apologize for the small print, but this is all vacant
I'm
land.
okay with that.
Huh?
I'm okay with that.
Oh, I know. For me,
I'm
it
the
gets
old
tougher
man,
and
yeah.
tougher. This is all vacant land that is under city council control. This is another list that the mayor has asked that we send over to planning and the other departments to look at. When you look at them just as a brief view, it seems that in some instances, they're leftover pieces of subdivisions or other things that were conveyed over to the city. Some of them may make sense to hold on to for municipal purposes, others may not. The mayor has us working on an ordinance to send down, which would be an abutters lots program, which would allow abutting owners to purchase these little vacant pieces at a reduced price and add them into their properties. We're in the, New Bedford's got the same ordinance, Taunton has the same ordinance, Boston does. We have that just about ready to go, it's being reviewed. It's going to be sent up to the Corporation Counsel's office to be reviewed, and for the mayor to take a look at it with the city administrator, and then I'm sure it'll be working its way down to you folks.
Council Lee? No, sir?
I'm good.
I can answer any questions you have on these.
I see on these land value, one is 235,000.
Right,
Is that
that's for,
right?
yeah, 1.9 acres of land on State Street. So these are all based off of the assessed values for fiscal 21. No, I take that back, for fiscal 20. So,
How many acres is that one? How many acres?
1.9 acres. It's on the north side of State Street.
And it's vacant?
It appears to be. If you look further down, Counselor, west of Bay Street, there's 4.34 acres at 306,000.
Yeah?
North of Middle Street, 6.9, at 420,000. Now, these are not parcels that are either under school control, they're not under municipal, public safety, they're not under parks and recreation, they're not under conservation. Those are all different categories. These are purely that are listed under city council control, and they're vacant. So what I would recommend is that once we send this over to planning and get input from them, and again, from the assessors as well, we can find out a little bit more about these. And there may be some that you may want to hold on to, there may be some that you've just acquired over the years that you may want to get rid of and put back on the tax rolls.
You got one here, 2.4 million. Next page.
Oh, Innovation Way,
What is that?
that's 131 acres of land off of Innovation Way. So that's the
city owns it?
biopark. Well, it's part of the biopark. It's part of the industrial park, or the business park. But it's apparently owned by the city, according to this. And again, these are all off of assessor's records. Code 930 is the land use code for publicly owned, for property that's under city council. So what we're looking to do is to go through and clean through these lists, and then maybe if you could table this discussion for another month or so, or to the next meeting, we could come back with more information for you.
Yeah, I don't think we have a problem with tabling it. It's interesting, though, to know how much vacant land we have and the value of these properties. And like you said, the neighbor to the right or to the left could maybe use it,
Right.
and the city can dispose of it, help pay for my pay, you know?
Well,
But there's a lot here, there's a lot.
there's an awful lot of them, and the idea is to get them back on the tax rolls if we can.
The process of putting in the information out there for people to know it's available.
It depends on what the ordinance finally looks like. If it follows most of the same type of ordinances, what happens is we put out an RFP listing all the properties. There is then a scoring system where the neighbors to it can, if one of them doesn't have parking in their yard, they get a point.
Okay.
If one of them has parking, they don't get the point. If somebody has no open space in their yard, they get half a point. If somebody's been taking care of it, they get half a point. So there's a scoring system. And then the price is typically set as $1 a square foot, adjusted for the neighborhoods. So the idea is to not make a lot of money off of these. These are typically vacant pieces. It's to get them back on the tax rolls. There's a condition that goes where if abutters on either side are interested in the same parcel, we would encourage them to buy it and split the parcel between them. If not, then we would go through the
Yeah,
scoring
you have to
system.
go through the scoring.
And in any case, it has to be added to the parcels that it abuts, and it can't be separated out under a variance so that you could put a house on it.
Oh, okay.
The goal is to make it so that you're trying to open up some space in the neighborhoods, not create additional density in the neighborhoods.
Right. So they have
there's
to
a
deal with
restriction.
parking and everything
Right.
else if you do all
So
that
they can't
anyway.
come in on a variance
Right.
and say, I've got an undersized lot.
Right.
The only way they'd be able to do that is if they bought enough of these lots that they actually qualified for a lot.
So incentive to buy is not always high.
No, so
Based
yeah,
on
so
that.
yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
These are typically non-buildable lots
Yeah.
where they're great to add in.
If someone looks at this list and they see all this property, they're like, wow, but then they realize,
Some of it may be
Yeah.
wet, some of it may have issues.
Yeah.
And the goal is to try to add it to the other properties. By adding it to the other properties, you're enhancing their value. You're kind of opening up maybe off-street parking in some of the neighborhoods. You're creating some open space in some of the neighborhoods. So it's a win-win all around.
who's responsible for the maintenance of those properties if there's dumping in there or anything like that?
Well, right now, it's the city.
Right.
And right now, the
And
city's
that's
liable for these
And
parcels.
that happens a lot, I'm assuming.
Right.
Yeah.
So the goal would be to get the appropriate ones, to get them into the private sector, into the property owners, so that they take care of them and we start collecting taxes off of them.
Yield the floor.
Would you go out to bid on these, or?
We would, the way that I've done it in the past, I had written this program years ago for New Bedford, and the first time we went through it, it was a list similar to this, and what we did is we advertised them all at once, and we had everything, it was at the high school at the time, they all came and they bid, and then everything got conveyed out about a week later, 2 weeks later.
Sold
in
them
days
all?
to them. In New Bedford, when we did it, we sold probably about 50% of them that were on the list. And and then what we did is we kind of followed them, and they were success stories. Some of them became gardens, some of them became off-street parking, some of them became open space for the neighbor, for the house. And in every instance, it was an amenity for the neighborhood, it made the neighborhood nicer, added to the property values.
All right, so you want to send the whole, table the whole thing?
Well, my suggestion, and I would defer to Mrs. Sadi about this, would be to table this to your next meeting. We can come back with further information at that point in time.
Yeah.
And in that time, you're going to refer to planning, right?
Yeah, we're gonna do it anyways.
Okay.
But if you want to send it to them, you can do that as well. But we are going to be sending it to planning, to engineering, and to community maintenance.
Motion to table.
A motion made, second by me, all in favor?
Aye.
And thank you for stopping by.
No problem, my pleasure. I think we're next on your
The
list,
next
too.
one's yours.
Oh, yeah, what's the next one?
Duro.
Doro.
Dora, all right. Take out of order, motion made, take out of order.
Motion made to take it out of order.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you again, Matthew Thomas, 4 Park Place, Suite 101, New Bedford, 02740. I'm special counsel, tax title attorney for the city. On the Duro issue, what I'm handing out right now, this is as of January 15th, 2020. This is what the outstanding liability is on all 4 properties, including, and down the bottom, you can see a breakout there of how much is in tax title, what the fiscal 20 is, how much in unpaid water and sewer, and the vacant building fees. So there's about $717,000 outstanding right now, about another $84,000 in interest. These parcels are currently in foreclosure once again at the land court. We had them in foreclosure once before, came right up to getting a decree, and Duro paid us over $500,000 to redeem them. At that point, they were going to do some work in removing some of the chemicals that had been at Globe Mills Avenue, which had been a big concern because of the school next door. And they were going to start trying to redevelop and sell the properties. They did remove the chemicals, but they didn't do anything towards redeveloping the properties. They didn't pay the taxes, and it went back into tax title.
This was in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Right, yeah, this is a very challenging issue because Duro no longer exists. It's been dissolved as a corporation. And there is a company in New York, Patriarch Partners, that what they did is they bought up debt from corporations, and they'd buy up assets from corporations. So here, what they did is they bought a $100 million mortgage from Bank of America, which was the major debt on this property. And they bought it through some trust that they had. The trouble is that when they bought it, they didn't do the assignment correctly, because at the time they bought it, they only recorded the assignment on the registered land piece, and there was no longer any registered land for Dura Road. The city had taken that years earlier to build the Cuss Middle School. So all they had is recorded land, so it's never been assigned on the recorded side, which creates a title issue. In addition to that, there's a substantial attachment on the property from Liberty Utilities for unpaid electric and gas. And on one of the parcels, there's an activity and use limitation from an oil spill from years ago onto the parking lot on Chase Street. Where we are right now is we are in the process of foreclosing once again. If we foreclose, we wipe out all the debt.
Yep.
But we end up with 4 buildings, and our goal is never to end up with buildings. Since 2011, we've collected over $18.5 million of past-due taxes, collected about another $5.5 million in interest, and we've only foreclosed on 18 parcels. We work with taxpayers. The city needs the money. It doesn't
Right.
need to be a landlord. But on these parcels, the decision was made that if we had to take them in and put them out for resale, we would. In the interim, while that case is pending at the land court, and these are not like bank foreclosures where you just advertise 3 times and sell it, we have to go through a lawsuit, and we've been doing that. A gentleman by the name of Rob Pereira came forward, indicated that he's negotiating with Patriarch Partners to buy these 4 properties. I think his potential use is housing, as development of, I don't remember how many units,
I don't remember how many units, but
but
it
it's
was
a
all. it was
significant
all
number of
housing.
units. He's represented by an attorney. The attorney was at the meeting with them. I've been following up with the attorney. I spoke to her as recent as about 2 hours ago. And what's happening, well, I wanted to have up-to-date information for you folks.
That's up to date.
And so what I found out is that they're still working with Patriarch Partners to try to resolve these title issues
Yeah.
on the mortgage. And she did receive a letter from Attorney Janine Cotillo, who represents Liberty Utilities, putting them on notice of what the amount, the payoff was on the attachment for the utility liens, non-municipal utility liens. And that's been forwarded over to Patriarch, and they're waiting to hear back from them. So where we had left this with them was that we were not going to stop the foreclosure. We're going to continue the process moving. And in order for them to get us to slow down on it, they have to produce something that shows they're ready to purchase it, and that they've got the wherewithal to purchase it, and that they have a plan to do something with it. To date, we have not received that, and so we're moving ahead with the land.
So in your professional opinion, just a question, your professional opinion, would this negotiation with Patriarch be a stalling tactic to you?
We're not letting it become one.
Okay,
I don't think that that was the intention.
okay.
But I made it very clear to them at the meeting, at the request of the mayor, to let them know that we are not delaying. We're proceeding. Unfortunately, this is going to have to be published in the paper because Chase Street, Inc., which is what Duro became, has been dissolved. So you have to publish
Okay.
in the Herald News, and we have to notify everybody. So the citations should be coming out soon from the land court. We've already served some of them with deputy sheriff, but we are not letting this slow down.
You know, what's been happening in Fall River, and we all seem to know what's happening, is that the hot item is the mills. And they're buying them up, and they're using them for housing, marijuana here and there, and you got 4 good buildings there. I think one is too close to the school for sure, and I don't know if they got sprinkler systems. They still work out there? or
No, they're not. What's
they're not?
happened is, from the last time the buildings went through foreclosure, the sprinklers were still working at that point in time, and they froze. And there was about a 6-foot thick wall of ice to get through the boiler room.
Yep.
Working with the fire department and working with the city and with the water department, the water's been shut off at the streets, the buildings have been marked, they're regularly inspected by Lieutenant LePage, and they keep track of what's there. What made it a little bit easy is that they've taken out most of the chemicals. That was the big issue with regard to Globe Mills Ave. But Counselor, you're right, these vacant mills do become enticing for redevelopment into housing.
Yeah.
The issue becomes, as you're redeveloping them, the odd irony here is if you take a vacant mill and fully build it out for housing, because of the split tax rate, it actually produces less in tax revenue than it did when it was a vacant mill. So the key is to try to make sure that there's a mix in these units, where you have some commercial uses, it could be a restaurant, it could be something like that, which helps protect the underlying tax base while allowing them to convert over.
I would say that, residential revenue is better than zero, at this
No doubt
point,
about
so-
it.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it. But there then does become a tax base issue. And so, but the goal is to get them back on the tax rolls for whatever use it is. And so I think is where it's moving toward. We are continuing to monitor this. I don't think there's any delaying tactics that we're allowing right now. It's a matter of just pushing it through the land court.
How fast do you think they're not moving fast enough?
Well, they're not moving fast enough for the potential buyers. They're
Yeah.
getting a little bit frustrated. For our purposes, this becomes a timing issue. And I think, given the way these things typically work out, we're probably looking at, if they don't buy it, we're looking at probably the city acquiring it through foreclosure sometime in August or September.
Okay. All right, any more questions?
No questions.
Okay, make a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank
very
you all.
much.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Matt.
No problem.
Okay. And back to the beginning. Item number 3, discussion flooding and building issues on Whitefield Street, adopted 11/19/2019. Come on up.
So we have JR, we have John Perry with us,
Yeah.
and we have Bill Roth.
Okay, and I invited Paul Phelan as well.
And Paul.
I just grab a seat. You can sit together and get, whatever, not married. Enough seats? All right, we're gonna start off here, give your name and your title, please.
John Perry, Director of Community Maintenance.
Mary Sahadi, City Administrator.
Bill Roth, Planning Director.
Marie Stasio.
Address.
My address, 120 Willow Street.
William Texera, 1019 Montgomery.
Paul Ferlin, Administrator of Community Utilities.
J.R. Fry, City Engineer.
All right, this has been a thorn in somebody's side for a while, and I was gonna do most of the speaking tonight, but instead, I asked Mrs. Estacio to come down and explain what's going on down there. I took a trip down there, the mayor took a trip down there, Trot Lee was there, and 2 or 3 other councilors. There's a problem there, and we're gonna try to get the situation squared away. I mean, some things are gonna be flying out tonight, and it's not to embarrass anybody, but we have to come up with a solution. That's what we're here tonight for, to address the problems and try to come up with a solution to take care of the problem that she has in the whole area as well. As we know, that was a swamp, it was a wetland, and some of the things that happen over there, whether they backfill or not backfill, I just don't know how they do it. They backfill things and then they build a house and the water keeps squeezing out and it goes out this way. It's ridiculous. How they got all the permits, I don't know. But I don't think everything was done on an up and up. So we're here tonight, and I'd like to start off with Mary Estacio.
I'm going to speak for
Okay.
Marie. Yep. So in 2004, Marie purchased 2 lots there, a 5,000 square foot lot and a 10,000 square foot lot. Back at that time, she received permission to build on a 10,000 square foot lot. And that was, again, in 2004. In approximately 2006, Jamie Duff purchased the surrounding lots and was granted by the city permission to build a housing development, essentially. on those lots. These homes were built, and consequently, after the homes were built, there were many flooding issues beginning to develop, causing even some of the houses to sink, which have since been jacked up, and you can tell that the decks are falling, and the house is jacked up. He was then granted somewhere along the way permission to put 2 large pipes under the street to remediate the water from the back of the houses on Frederick Street. So essentially, those houses are taken, those pipes are taking the water from behind the houses on Frederick, going under the street. I think there are 2 10-inch pipes, if I'm not mistaken, onto her 10,000 square foot lot that she had permission to build on in 2004. Plus, we also found out there's a pipe coming from Linwood Street that is also remediating water somewhere on Linwood Street to the back of her lot. This also needs to be said, when those lots were developed, when it was built, there was a swale, I guess, put behind the new development and the houses, which do not show up on her plots at all when she got her variance to build. So this pipe that's coming over from Linwood is now dumping water onto her lot. So essentially, she's getting water from the front, from these 2 pipes that were, according to JR, which we spoke to JR, were probably not pitched correctly to begin with, and there's water coming from Linwood Street, and he can speak to that if you'd like. So basically, this 10,000 square foot lot, which was once the highest lot, is now the lowest and the most wet. It seems like it's being used as a dumping ground for, to remediate water from these other lots. We went to city engineering numerous times, JR can attest to that, to speak about, what was going on there with these pipes that were pitched into the, into the lot. We witnessed ourselves during a couple storms. We went down and saw, water just flooding out of these pipes and dumping into the lot. We also asked for, was there any inspections done? Were there any permits pulled? Can we see any of that? And at that point, we haven't seen anything up to this point. Something else to be said is that their Cape Cod berm that was in front of the lot was removed. So at the same time, the water coming down the street is also dumping into that lot. It's the only lot that we could see that has no Cape Cod berm in front of it. So all the water coming from the rain and everything else is dumping into that lot. Again, it seems like either somebody removed the fill from the lot to make it the lowest point to use to remediate, or it built up everything else around it so everything could dump into it. In 2016, somebody else submitted a plan to the city to build a house on the adjacent lot. That plan showed runoff water dumping directly onto our lot again. So we have a picture of that as well, print out.
The person was denied until and told that they had to use my lot. You need to use this lot to.
Give her the microphone.
That I spoke to the owner, he had stated that he was told to use my lot.
By whom?
The owner that was asking permission, he called me.
He
Wanted
called
to
you.
purchase my land.
Yeah.
And I said my land wasn't for sale. He says, it's all wetlands. The city's using it just to dump water. And I stated, no, that's not true. And he says, yes. He says, they even had me use your land as a runoff. And I actually went to the city and got a copy, and it's approved by the city for him to use my lot, run his water right through my lot.
And who approved it?
This is the city who approved it. And I believe I
All right,
sent
who
copies.
knows about the pipe? JR?
So are we specifically speaking about the pipe under Whitefield Street? I don't know about a pipe that drains from Linwood Street.
All right, we're talking about the pipe right now. She's talking about
Oh, this is the one off
that
the-
she got permission, they got permission to go on her property.
Correct.
Through the city. Who? Through who?
So regardless of, it appears to have gone through a site plan review process, and that would have gone through my predecessor, and Bill's predecessor. Regardless, the approvals at this point have expired because they were never acted upon. So there is no approval for the site plan or to my knowledge, for a building permit. There's no active Conservation Commission file on it. So at this point, going forward, they'd have, any construction that was proposed for her abutter would have to go back through the entire process.
So you're telling me would they take the pipe out?
There was never any pipe there. What they were proposing was sheet runoff over land. And I can't speak to the reasons that it may have been approved at that time. But based on the grades that were proposed, it isn't significantly different from what was, from the drainage pattern that currently existed.
Yep.
With that said, it does not meet our current stormwater requirements in terms of stormwater mitigation, and it would not be approved at this time.
Well,
She's talking about the pipes that are part of the subdivision.
So if we're talking about the pipes that are part of the subdivision, the pipes, they're laid within the city's right-of-way. All hydraulic flow, so all water, whether it's from, regardless of its original source, is generally, over time, going to flow to the north across Whitefield Street. If there are individual circumstances due to an obstruction in the conveyance on the north side of the road, that may result in a temporary higher head on the north side of the road that could potentially push water back, but over time, the grade, the general grade for, that's going to direct the water is all flowing from the south to the north.
okay, I understand that, but does she have a pipe going across her lot that was approved?
There's no pipe that goes across
Is
her
there a
lot.
pipe going through the lot?
There are two pipes.
That's a street, right?
There are two pipes coming from under the street, Whitefield.
Okay.
From the back of the houses on Frederick. And we actually have, land plots of Frederick where they built those houses from 10, 15 years ago that shows that a swamp. That those were literally, houses were built on a swamp, so. And, you know,
Let me see that thing, please.
that,
Yeah, no, this is- all right.
It's the same plan, but the.
This
color-
here, right?
Yep,
This thing right here, what is this?
that's just an indication of the direction of drainage.
That's all?
That's
There's no
all.
pipe there?
There's no pipe.
There's two pipes in the front.
That's-
Okay,
There's a pipe
in the
back,
street.
And then
You're right.
the
on the street.
the
Yeah, right here.
neighbor on the
Yeah.
side
All right,
was supposed to put like a dredge
Yeah.
so that his water flows out of his land
Mhm.
into my land,
okay,
and
All right.
he was told by the city to do so.
all right, so I understand that. So
So-
you got the two pipes?
So
Going-
one
going
of the
across.
issues that we have is that I understand those two pipes are put on probably that first however many feet is city-owned land. But we believe that the water is trespassing on our land because whether or not I put a pipe here and you own that, the water is now traveling onto the land and trespassing on our land, which is now making our land unusable. And also, on the back, there was a swale that was put in for those other houses in that development, which our land plot does not show a swale, but yet there was a pipe on the back of that dumping into the back of the land. Again, it is literally infringing on the property, the lot. It's trespassing. You know, whether or not the pipe itself crosses that border,
Yeah,
in my opinion, is inconsequential because the water itself is trespassing on the land, and you can't go to somebody's house and just dump water in their property. And that's where we're at now.
to get to the swale, you know, it's 25 feet from the boundary on the houses here, and the houses on that side, and then you got 25 feet that goes out, and that's a swale that goes down some 800 feet. How do you get away with that? Shouldn't that be piped?
Well, one of the other
I mean, that's
situations
ridiculous.
is people have filled in that swale, probably not being told by whoever sold them the house or the land, or however it worked, and they filled it in the meantime, putting sheds up, putting pools up. I stepped in the back of those houses. Those people are in, a foot of water.
Yeah,
So-
well, you look out the back window, and you see the swale, you see the water, a foot and a half, but, there's something wrong. I mean, take the water, divert it into a pipe, and get rid of the water. You don't have to be able to look at that all the time.
And I have photos that show, I mean, a humongous amount of water coming into my lots.
Yeah.
This is not, it was raining and the water was just gushing.
Sure.
It was like me turning on a faucet.
Yeah.
And 10 fire hose, thank you, a fire hose. And it coming out of all these pipes
Yeah.
into my land.
You-
Dumping, making my land unbuildable.
Usually a swale is away from the buildings, and it goes down, the water pipes in, the water stays there, and there's no problem. I've never seen a swale like yours. House on this house on this side, and you got the V, and that's it.
And then on top of it is not only was that done, then they removed the dirt from my land to make sure the land, all the water goes into my land.
And who done
they
that?
removed-
Well,
Okay, I don't want to mention any names.
No,
just-
let me explain
this
a little
is
bit
what was
about that.
done. And then the berm was taken so that the water comes down to the hill and goes straight directly into my land.
so in the meantime, the neighbor up the street had a sewage pipe put in with an instant, whatever it is, to get rid of the sewer, to connect to the sewer line. So at that same time, he had to cross through the front of the property. And meanwhile, we asked him if he could backfill our property, because we had a previous discussion with Dennis in engineering and JR. And Dennis said, you can fill, it's your land, you can cut the trees down, you can fill it in, you can do what you want. We started to talk to him about filling it in and knocking down the brush so we could make it buildable for her two kids, which had planned on building a house there. The gentleman started to fill it in and went, as far as I could tell, we went down and measured, I don't have the drawing in front of me, but there's about a 9 foot wide spot that's supposed to be for this water to dump in. I don't know how you keep water in a 9 foot spot by 15. But according to what this gentleman told me, the contractor, he told me that JR told him that he could not leave that, dirt wall up to try to stop some of the water from going into our lot. And he had to open it up. So now at this point, it's a big wide open,
Even further.
it's a big wide open funnel for the water to just dump in. I mean,
This was recent.
Okay. Council Lee?
Well, you were told specifically not to not to block the water from,
Exactly.
right, you were told specifically not to do that.
Specifically, I spoke with
He's
JR.
right.
I spoke with JR, and I asked him, I told him, this is not fair. Everyone's water's going into my land. And he said, he had his hands tied. It's true, there's nothing he can do about it.
Who
And
said
I-
this?
JR. Says, my hands are tied, I cannot do anything about it. There's too many people who have serious water problems, and if I allow you to fill your land, it's going to destroy their land. So therefore, I'm not going to allow you to touch your land. You cannot do anything. City is using your land to dump the water.
Well,
And-
it's in July 2004, and you had a building permit.
Yes,
So what changed?
dry land.
What changed? JR, what changed?
So, first of all, what I've specifically told Mrs. Stasio numerous times is that what I cannot do is provide blanket approvals for work that I don't know what their final intention is going to be. So I've asked her to prepare an engineered plan that would explain, that would depict what they intend to do. And a plan like that would be very standard. It's what we do for all of our site plan reviews. That would allow me to provide commentary, to direct them and make sure that their butters are not impacted. It would allow us to advise her of any other approvals that she might need, because there are several, and we'd be able to go forward. What I can't simply do is say, yes, just fill land, fill wetlands. It's completely inappropriate.
But, you used that terminology last time. My hands are tied. You remember that? My hands are tied. Why is your hands always tied? Is somebody, where's this come from?
The law is where it comes
the
from.
law.
Yes.
She had permits to build in 2004. Now what happened?
I can't answer that. I don't have any building permit that I've seen that would have allowed it. We don't have any Concom submissions that would have allowed any work within the buffer zone prior to 2006.
204, do you see this? She was approved.
But
Lot-
that's not a building permit.
Well, it is the appeal board, and they thought they were ready to go,
Right.
and according to what I see, I thought so
So
as
the-
well. So what's the answers here?
So this is from the zoning board of appeals. That doesn't mean that they have a buildable lot. That just means that they're waiving their rights to be able to build on, waiving the zoning so that they could build on that lot. Within this area, that has been a historic low point in that area. I went back and I looked at some of the old aerial footage of the Whitefield Street, that area of the street where those drainage pipes are put across, constantly on some of the old aerials show water sitting in Whitefield Street where those drainage pipes were put in. For anything to say that any water is piped from Linwood Street onto this lot, that wasn't done by the city. That isn't the city's water. So we have a drainage system on Linwood Street. It was installed roughly about 2016 or so, maybe a year or two before that. It takes all the water from the abutters behind her parcel, is actually the first catch basins. It takes that water, puts it into pipes on Linwood Street, travels east on Linwood Street, down to where we have an easement in between two houses, about 400 feet to the east of this area, and puts it to where the natural water has always flowed, which is out Deer Bend Road, which is Bear Den Road in Tiverton, and then out to the natural swamp behind there. Eventually, this water makes its way all the way back through Stafford Pond and then down to the South Watupper again. So that's just a little bit of history, kind of in this area. There's some of the research that I did today, looking back at some of the prior subdivisions, going back to or plans that have been submitted, conservation filings that have been done, going back as far as 2011 and some even prior to that, do indicate BVW, which is bordered vegetated wetland on this property, flagged at the time by somebody that's able to do that type of flagging to identify wetland areas. That did cover the center part of this property. Back when this variance was issued, just some of the problems that I see with being able to construct on that lot was that there was no water or sewer available at that time out there. With all the housing development that was installed, they brought water out to that area, they brought sewer out to that area. On a 10,000 square foot lot in this area, knowing the issues with drainage and everything in this area and the high water table, it would be extremely tough to be able to get a septic system and a well along with a house on a 10,000 square foot lot in this area. So that's just, some of the issues. We did, building department did review their paperwork before. They weren't able to find any building permit application or an issued building permit at that time. So that doesn't mean that they didn't have one, but building department couldn't find one in the records for an actual building permit.
Lot C-17, 24. Is that house up?
17.
It's not up.
No, it is not.
It's proposed, right?
Yeah, so that was a proposed house. And this plan that you're looking at was,
My permission to construct a single-family dwelling.
what the property owner is referencing is the variance decision. This is strictly waiving the requirements in the single-family zone for lot size and frontage. And it's granted for zoning purposes. A variance does not grant you, you still have to follow the requirements for building permit and any conservation that's necessary. So this decision here from 2004 is strictly a variance waiving the zoning requirements, which is your first hurdle. So this just waived the zoning requirements. It's not a building permit, and it would have required a building permit. And based on the files that we have, there's a plan from 2006 and 2011 that show a wetland on the site. So in order to build on this site, even today, it would theoretically be possible to build on this site, but you would have to hire an engineer, you would have to file a conservation filing, because Conservation Commission under the law could allow you to fill up to 5,000 square feet of wetlands. So, and the Wetlands Protection Act provides that we could look at doing some amount of fill or approving it in order to build a single-family house, something, as they call that, is practicable and reasonable. But these are processes that the property owner could go through today, filing conservation. We could not approve any more than 5,000 square feet, but you could look at carving out an area of the property. The variance is no longer valid because it has to be acted on within a year. Yeah. We could help support a variance to pull a house closer to the street, away from the wetlands, to minimize fill. That is a clear topography, soils, land conditions, which the variance is, which is state law for variance. So that could be done. There is a process which I feel could be followed to look at filling enough to put a single-family house on this. Would require site plan review also, and through the site plan review and conservation, look at probably engineering, and I'm sure community utilities would look at adding in some additional drainage swales to make sure whatever water is conveyed, so you can get that water out through whatever pipe. So there is a process that we could go through. We have not made this unbuildable.
All right,
And we don't know about this pipe
Can
on
I-
Linwood.
All right.
Can I bring
Well-
up a point about an aerial view
Okay.
before the development was ever built? This body of water is where Frederick Street houses are now. That big body of water. This is the lot that we're talking about. Doesn't show water, doesn't show anything. It was dry. People used to ice skate here.
A wetland doesn't necessarily
I
mean
understand the vegetation
standing
and
water,
whatnot,
it's vegetation. I'm just following by the plans that we have that show a legally flagged wetland.
I understand. Also, this abutting neighbor here, who's been there for 50 years and lived in that area, can come in and tell you that this was not, wet. There might have been some vegetation, but nothing like it is now.
I walked on that lane.
And her parents owned a house right in back of this pond, which is now all houses. These are the houses that are sinking.
Pond is gone.
The pond is filled in, and that water is coming through those pipes onto this lot, which is our lot.
So how does
That's pretty
someone
easy to
fill a
see
pond
it.
up?
I have. I do not know.
I mean, that's crazy. They fill a pond, nobody knows about it.
I know.
I mean, there's so many rules and regulations, and guy fills a pond in. Doesn't make sense to me. Now, if you took that avenue that he explained to you, what would happen to the two pipes going through? You divert that someplace else? Is that the pipe that's going across the street?
So,
Dumping on their property.
so currently, those pipes that cross that street were actually installed to convey water from the south side to the north side of Whitefield Street, so that didn't overtop the road as it did in the past. The water on the south side of the street, the north side of the street, so this is the area by Frederick Street, all of that goes through a swale system, and eventually, it's not an annual stream or anything, but it's a very defined swale system that goes behind those houses across the street, goes through the power line area, which is to the north of Frederick Street, and then eventually makes its way into Cook Pond. So there is a defined channel that water does follow currently. Is it, is there vegetation and obstructions within there? Yeah. Does it flow the best, that it could? No. Does it have the best pitch that it could? No. And that's some of the problems. You mentioned about a couple of these different areas, including this one, and with the swale behind the other houses on Whitefield Street. Taking all of this water and putting it inside a pipe doesn't always work. So it's tough. You got to work with the water levels around you. So if you're taking a pipe, you need a certain pitch to be able to get that water to move. If you're working and you're taking and conveying that water into a wetland area or a pond, you need that pipe to be able to be above the water level of the pond. You can't just take that water and put it into the pipe, because then the water from the pond will back right up into the pipe, and the surface water will never move down and out. So those are a couple of reasons that we would either use a surface swale, an open swale, or rather than putting everything into a pipe. The other thing about surface drainage swales, those are highly promoted through DEP, EPA with our MS4 permit. It's a federal permit that requires us to monitor our water quality of all of our non-combined sewer discharges. So that's anywhere where the water runs over land, goes into a separated drainage system, and then goes out to a body of water. What a swale does, a swale actually creates a benefit to be able to clean the water, take some of the nutrients and phosphates out of the water so that it doesn't impact the water bodies that it drains into. So even though some people don't, it's not the best, they don't like having a swale in their yard or going through the side of their yard, but sometimes we definitely prefer a swale. Helps us meet some of our federal permit requirements, and it also helps us with some of our water quality issues that we continuously deal with.
So what's the answers for these people?
So again, I think, Mr. Roth and Mr. Fry discussed them possibly hiring an engineer to take a look at that piece of land. I think if they had a licensed professional engineer come in, survey the land, do a topo on it, come up with the actual wetland that's on there, and come up with a proposed plan to move forward. There are multiple steps that they would have to go through. Again, Mr. Roth pointed out that the variance is out of date and would need to be updated. They would have to go through Conservation Commission approvals as well, site plan review, and I'm not sure whether there would be other departments that would have to take a look at it. The one benefit that they do have now is that they don't have to look at putting a septic system in or a well, because water and sewer are currently there and available.
Okay, can I speak?
Yeah, good.
So you're honestly saying, I purchased a lot in 2004 that was buildable, a 10,000 square feet lot with no problem with water, and then James Duff comes along a few years later, builds on 4,000 square feet of lots. Most of his lots are 4,000 square feet. And his houses are underwater. The city puts pipes underneath into my lots, 3 pipes, drains my lots completely, and now I should hire an engineer to fix the problem that the city has caused me. And you find that, honestly, you find that fair?
So again, I don't see where the city has approved any drainage to go on your lot from anywhere within Mr. Duff's subdivision. The swale that runs behind the houses, that all heads to the east, to the swamp. If that drainage swale is under the care of the developer, It is within all of those property owners' deeds that they maintain the swale and that they make sure that water conveys through that swale and is able to get out. There's no indication that, the division over there pushed it off. Again, looking back in our records, there's, going back to 2006, 2011, there is flagged wetlands on that property. Again, I can't say, what it was prior to that, but if you look back at some of the historic photos, aerials of that area of Whitefield Street, which was the low point of Whitefield Street, does always have a continuous puddle within the street right in front of that lot, from the
Okay.
photos that I saw.
My lot was high. My lot was high. I literally walked with my children on the entire lot, because we were gonna build our home. And then it dropped. The land would literally drop. And all that lot was underwater, and the opposite side was, literally, we went ice skating on it. The Frederick Street, we went ice skating. Me and my children ice skated with the neighborhood kids. Okay, so it literally dropped, and all of a sudden, my lot is under, and everyone's lot is above, and everything's dumping in my lot. Literally, you've got two huge pipes right in front of my lot, throwing water every single day into my lots. How could you say the city's not dumping water in? You see it right in front of your face, the water is dumping right into my lots. And my neighbors, who was always underwater, their land is drying, and my land is going under.
I guess another question I have,
Obvious.
if you say that you have to see the impact of us filling our land, who saw the impact of everybody else filling their land? Let's say they filled it to make it higher, to make sure that they didn't affect our land. You know what I'm saying? So somebody had to be responsible for looking at those plans and saying, you can't do that because you are now going to flood this lot. So that's where we're trying to find out, where do we go from here? I don't think any responsibility should come on us as far as paying people to survey and to get engineering there and everything else, because frankly, I think the city, or whoever in the city, or a combination of contract, city, were irresponsible for this whole development, and at this point, we have an unbuildable lot. And you're saying, and I understand what Mr. Roth is saying, that he'll work with us and we can do all these other things, but that's at our cost. We already paid for a lot that had a variance to build.
I want to explain that a lot of this was not done under what's called subdivision control. If you look at some of these plans, we pulled all these record plans. They're called A&R, Approval Not Required Plan. So what the developer, unfortunate, that's probably one of the portions of state law that I absolutely hate as a planner, is if there is a way that is passable under the law, if they meet the requirements for frontage and area, and mind you, I think this has been changed. It says R8. So it used to be single family, which was 12,000 square feet. Now it's 8,000 square feet. So at some point the zoning got changed, and I don't know when. Approval not required means that they can come file this plan, and I'm just using this plan that I have here, that shows that they created these lots on Whitefield. There's lots 20, 19, 18. Your lot is just on the other side of 21. There's no subdivision control and no drainage because we had no authority because it was not considered a subdivision under Mass General Law. So the developer creates this plan, the planning board's required to sign it, and he, knowing that it's a swampy area, creates this utility easement, which we actually have copies of. From a deed, and I actually printed it pretty large, that talks about the conveyance of water along these lots right here. A perpetual right and easement, because if you notice this plan, it says utility easement 9, 18, 17. That drains the water this way, not towards your land. This is the Whitefield portion. On Linwood, they have the same thing of these approval not required. So the city did not grant any, we did not review or grant any approvals for drainage because it was not considered a subdivision under subdivision control law where engineering community utilities would get the thing. So some of this stuff is actually a civil matter, not with the city, but with the developer and the landowner. If a landowner, in fact, filled over here and directs a pipe from Linwood, which I don't know, I do know that, we do see some road plans that show these pipes, and as I said, it will builds up slightly, but the inverts still go to the north. So, well, we actually have the inverts here. One of them is pitched incorrectly, but the other one is. Every indication is that they still will ultimately drain to the north, and they shouldn't drain, that they have to build up water, but that's an engineering. But what I'm letting you know is the approval not required. If this was a subdivision and we reviewed the drainage and engineering and approved it, then you can start pointing the finger at the city. Unfortunately, this developer knows enough, and they had enough of a road surface to be able to do the approval not required. They created their own drainage. We don't maintain it. We don't own it. It's private. And so unfortunately, some of this is a civil matter. And I looked at all the files at the Registry of Deeds. I pulled them all. And every single one from 2006 up are all approval not required. There's no actual there's two subdivisions that are filed. One of them is a revision, never been acted on. And the other one, there's something about they must have done some road improvements, but other than that, that's all they've done. So some of this, especially the stuff on Linfield, you're saying drain, we never reviewed the engineering because they submitted it under approval not required, not a subdivision control. So if people are draining, if the back properties are draining on you, that's a civil matter that you have to deal with them. If you want to look at building a house, I can help guide you through the process and get you there. But every indication I have on all the plans that we have in our possession indicate back to 2006 that there were wetlands on this lot. The Zoning Board of Appeals was strictly, it's not a building permit. It was permission to think. And the other thing that I want to stress is all of these houses were built before the city instituted site plan review, because now, and you know what? I think this development and a couple other ones, from what I gather, are some of the reason why we have site plan review now. Because this is what you get, unfortunately.
I have
You-
3 pipes running water in my land,
Yeah.
destroying my land. And you state that they followed codes. I have 3 pipes, you see it. And
There's no codes. We didn't.
So the
We
city
didn't.
allowed pipes to come
The,
to my land
the,
to destroy my
the
land.
problem is, the contractor done what he wanted to do, because he can get away with it.
And the
That's what he
city's
done.
problem.
He done what he had to do to make money, and he didn't have to get the special permits to do anything. That's the problem.
So he broke all the codes, all the laws, all the codes.
He could because of the RA, is that what you call it?
The A&R.
A&R, that's why, he could do what he wants. So he took all the shortcuts that he could in punishing everybody in that area. And also, what I'd like to find out, what he done what he want there, but there's a problem, there is a problem. And then I wanna know, and I don't care who gets it, the information, how he filled the pond up. How did he get a permit to fill the pond up? I mean, is that DEP or whatever? He probably would never done anything but filled it up. It's crazy. So everybody's suffering because of the contractor. And here we are debating this thing, and it doesn't seem that the city wants to help because they're not involved. But they said you can take this avenue, they would help you to do whatever you have to.
And that would cost me money. These
Well-
pipes are destroying my land, and now I have to pay out of my pocket to repair the
No,
damage that
you
the
don't.
city allowed.
You don't, you said it. It's a
I
civil,
believe that based on the information that we've seen in our files, you got a zoning board of approval back in 2004. It stands a good reason, based on looking at the 2006 survey, that you would have had to file for conservation and do what I'm telling you have to do now. You would still have to file for conservation. You'd still have to fill based on the wetlands that showed in 2006 and the 2010 plan, that the zoning board of appeals gave you the variance to build, but there were still wetlands present regardless. The pipe, if you look how the wetlands are shaped based on the road plan that was done prior to this development ever being built, it indicated wetlands on the site, and I have those.
And I have all
So-
the neighbors that lived there would say, they all came on my land. It was all dried, it was ready to build. The land was dry, and like I said, it had a complete huge drop. And my lot now is so much under, and everybody's so much higher. They came, they removed my filled up all their lots, and then put the pipes and just kept dumping. The city's been using my lot to dump all that water since.
The city's not dumping water.
The city was-
Your
Uh,
neighbors,
uh,
your
The city
neighbors are,
was-
your neighbors are.
The city was aware that they're dumping the pipe, then remove the pipes. Remove the pipes so it doesn't destroy my land anymore. And you see it, you can see with your own eyes. You know, anyone can see it.
So-
Two-year-old child can say, this pipes are destroying those.
Can I ask one more question? The pipes that were installed, who did the checks and balances when that road was built? Who inspected the checks and balances to make sure that those pipes were actually installed correctly? Were those on this loophole? Because in my opinion, you can walk where those pipes are, and I would say that a good 75% of the water is coming from those two pipes. And I know which wetlands you're talking about that were flat because they were around the backside. This is now the front side that is soaked. So
The wetlands on the plan.
here's the pipes. Here's the wetlands. They're right here. Aren't they?
No, these two pipes.
No, these are the pipes, but what are these?
That's a high spot.
So this right now? This section,
All underwater.
this is all,
It's
you can't walk there.
underwater because of these two pipes. It's all underwater.
So we had a chance to go down there, as Councilor Pelletier said, and we were with the family here. We went not just to her lot where it was completely filled with water, and you can see it trickling to the back area, but it was also going in the water. There was water, literally looking like pools of water in about 3 or 4 different properties behind, all the way back. So, yeah, so you would.
On Whitefield or Linfield?
Whitefield there. Right.
Oh.
So we wanna, so we wanna just, I'm just giving you my observation of when it was, how it looked, because we're hearing that everything's flowing north, and what's going on right now is the water is going into her lot. It's complete, you could see the two pipes they were just dripping water when we were there, and it was a Sunday afternoon. We're walking back into other people's properties. Buffy, is it? Yep, so we're going to other people's properties, and we had permission to look in the backyards. There's just pools of water. They can show you all the photos. Pools of water all the way there. So it's not supporting
So the pools of water that you're seeing there are from this swale that runs along the length of the property. Now,
Yeah.
if you look at the deeds of these properties, each of those swales is designated for each property, and it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain, clean, and upkeep those swales. So if you look at this deed,
Okay.
you'll see in this paragraph here, that's what it denotes, that these swales are part of the properties that you see listed here.
And they-
So the water on the backside that you see that Buffy actually experiences is not from any of what you see on these plans and what Mr. Stasio is speaking about. That is created by this swale in the back. That was installed, as said, by the contractor to, in effect, allow him to be able to build these lots and maintain that water back there.
Just want to tell you what we saw when
Right,
we were
right.
there.
Just so you know, it's
And-
two
yeah,
separate,
it might be two
distinctly
separate-
separate issues.
It may be, very well may be, and I'm not,
Right.
who am I
Oh,
gonna deny
absolutely,
your,
no.
what you're saying here, but what I would say is what we saw was water was going from the pipes into her lot, water was flowing to the back and around to the back area where these swales were also accumulating water apparently. But it just all looked like it didn't look like it was done very well. I would just throw it out there. And on this situation, it looks as though, like you said many times, you said it multiple times that there's a civil situation here, that she has a civil, case to go forward with against, I'm assuming, the contractor, correct?
And since she should check with an attorney, the property owners that are dumping water on her.
So she would need to, if she's being told that she has to now spend more to build, is that what she's being told?
She's being told that she would have to follow, she's being told that she would have to follow the process that any other resident would have to go through in order to develop a piece of property.
That has
On wetlands.
That has wetlands.
Right, correct.
Wetlands on a portion of the road.
But if someone allegedly, possibly, did something wrong to her,
So
right?
the significance and the volume of water, and Mr. Roth can correct me if I go astray here, but the significance and the volume of water that may have been on the property at any given time would not have excluded the fact that you still would have had to follow this process because the lands were considered wetlands, okay? So whether, when you used to walk that with your children, it was dry, it was still considered wetlands. It was delineated as wetlands. So the process still would have had to be the same that you would have had to follow then. So you very well at that point, still back then, would have had to take steps to ensure that when you built that, if you got the variance and got the building permit, that you still took certain steps to ensure that you could do it the right way on a wetland property. The amount of water, I think, may have been affected by the contractor, the subdivision, another neighbor from Frederick or Linwood dumping some pipes, installing some pipes. As we said, this swale behind is owned by each of these property owners. So if anybody does anything along that swale, a pool, a shed, that could affect the flow of water as well, which, and I understand your frustration, you feel as though there wasn't a check and balance from the city side.
Who owns the pipes?
But
Who allowed him to put pipes under the
Don't-
street?
when were the pipes installed?
I'm not sure.
After the development,
2012.
after the development.
2012.
Yes.
So,
That's because those houses, I don't mean to interrupt you, but those houses are sinking. And we actually have numerous people that live on that street that are trying to jump on board because they are suffering with water in their backyards and ticks and all kinds of things.
so I think
who does
the
require?
approval, I think the approval not required, law, unfortunately, in this particular situation is what's really muddying the waters as far as.
So when the
to-
road was made, there was nothing that needed to be done for the road either? So when the city utilities were put in for sewage, and water, there was no checks and balances for that either?
I would have to defer and get some information. I don't want to answer a question I don't have specifics
I
for.
guess what I'm saying is I think that road was done and those pipes were put in at the same time.
It was done at literally exact the same time, because I remember James Duff telling me. I'm about to put in I have to put in the street and about to put in pipes. Well, will you sell me your lot? And as for my building, my 2 lots, I remember coming here to City Hall for the variance building permits. They accepted the 10,000 square feet, telling me that's dry land. We're gonna allow you to build on that land. However, your other lot, 5,000 square feet, which is below, is wet. We will not allow you to build. So I was denied one and accepted on the other. And the city themselves saying their 10,000 square feet is accepted because it is dry. The 5,000 is wet, it is denied.
Okay,
The city is telling me that.
we have a young lady that's got a little bit of information. I'm gonna invite her down. Just step down. Get a chair.
Here's a chair for you.
Oh, he's good.
You all want to run for me right now, that's why. Come on, JR.
We're gonna need your... Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yep. Need your name, address.
Buffy Maderas, 169 Whitefield Street, Fall River, Massachusetts. Okay, so I am the third owner of my house, and I come to find out why once everything hit the fan. I'm very familiar, well, JR is very familiar with me, Paul's very familiar with me, you're a little familiar.
met.
Yes, we've met. Eugene is very familiar with me, as well as Glenn.
Okay.
I bought this house on Whitefield Street. I have a swamp in my yard. Everybody's pointing fingers. At the end of the day, is it Jamie Duff?
Yep.
Okay, he's the one that created this disaster. Also, if he had the rights to do this without permission from the city, that's fine. But what about the parts that he did that the city had to inspect? Like the pipes in my driveway bursting. I just had to pay, how much, Paul? Like almost $5,000 to replace the pipes, because they weren't the right fittings. So everybody else in the neighborhood that had the same problem, the city fixed it for them, free, because
Who put him in?
Jamie Duff. The city, before I owned my house, fixed everybody else's that bursted because they weren't the proper fittings. Me, I didn't get that leisure. I was told I had to pay for it, they weren't doing it. Okay? I did, because I had no choice. My sewer was coming through my driveway. I don't think that's fair.
No.
That's supposed to be inspected from the city. So what's not at fault of the city, okay, is not at fault of the city, but what about what is? My house had water in all the walls. I was deathly ill, didn't know why. The city inspected my house when it was built and allowed this contractor to proceed with selling this house with building issues. I have reports and reports and reports from engineers and contractors. There was so much mold in my walls, I had to gut out my whole house. Nobody's done nothing. So not only do I have a flooded yard, I had a flooded house. I had a bursted sewer pipe in my driveway. Nobody's helped me with nothing in the 3 years I've been in this house. I've been dealing with that. My house is 6 years old this June.
Let me ask you a
The
question.
newest house on the street.
Have you talked to Mr. Duff?
He will not speak to me.
There you go. There's the problem.
He won't speak to me, and
No.
I don't have the money
Yeah.
to bring him to court.
Well, you know, there's,
$10,000, the attorney told me.
okay, you have other people that their house is sinking, their decks are sinking.
My house is sinking.
Okay, here you go. They call that class action suit against
Right.
him. That's where you should go. I mean, we ain't getting nowhere. He done what he wanted
Right.
because he could do what he wanted.
Right.
You got a problem, he doesn't want to take care. He don't want to talk to you. He knows what he done wrong up there.
Right.
He took everybody over the hills.
But there's no
That's what he
help
done.
that the city can give us to get to make him answer to this and fix these problems,
You know, I think you're absolutely right.
where
Maybe-
everything's supposed to be inspected.
They should be inspected. Where they're inspected, we ought to know that. Did we send people out to inspect it? And how'd they get away with it? Come on here. You know, Duff is at fault, the city's at fault a little bit. The neighbors are completely fed up with the whole situation. Money here, money there, to get what you should have got. The pipes going through, they don't belong there. That's the problem. That's the problem. And I think both of us, you get a lawyer, and there's a couple other people. They tell me the house is sinking a little bit, they can't close the doors. The deck is falling. Well, listen, this is bad.
But the city told James Duff to put the pipes in front of my yard. The city told James Duff
There's
to do that.
there's still
So
a
this is
level
not,
of permission.
he was told by the city, I mean, he can't build a
Is
road.
that true?
He can't
What do you-
build a road
Well, who
without-
called the shot to put the pipes in?
Again, I'm not aware of any, I wasn't here back in 2011 or 2012.
This is a mess. It's a mess, and it's gonna be straightened out.
And
We
that's what I
gotta get
was,
our heads together, and we're gonna straighten this out.
that's
The
what I was,
lawyers, the city, whatever we're gonna do, this is gonna be
When-
squared away.
when-
This is
when-
ridiculous.
When you say that the city told Mr. Duff to do that, do you, where do you,
From James Duff himself.
okay.
No, but
So-
even JR said, JR said himself to me, we had to put the pipes there, because there was a flood on the other side, so we had to drain water.
Well,
Well,
we're not making any headway, to be
You're
honest
draining
with you
water
here.
into my lot, to relieve the water from their lot.
So where do we go from here, guys?
not quite sure, Counselor, what the end resolution could be. I mean,
The
I
whole
hear.
complex needs help. The whole complex needs help. It was a swamp, there was a swamp there, Pecastic Swamp, whatever the case may be. He fills in a small pond. I mean, let's find out how he done this. And he does what he wants,
Would it-
because he could do what he wants, and he done what he wants.
Would it be worth inviting Mr. Duff to one of these
He
future
did get
meetings?
invited, he did get
He
invited.
wouldn't show?
He's in Florida,
he won't come.
enjoying the money,
So,
that's about it.
So I think one of the things we can actually do is just say, in the future, maybe if Mr. Duff is coming to looking for variances to do things on properties, that we have something in place to say no.
That's all well and good. You can do that, but we need answers, we need relief for these people, and something's gotta be done. That's the thing, now. Not to shut him off, he's gotta do it, that's it. And we should try to get a hold of him and see what he's got to say. Hey, maybe he will correct this on his own, because it's hurting his reputation as well. You gotta let him know. You never told him what happened to you, right?
He won't speak
He
to me.
won't speak to you. Do you talk to him about the problem? Duff?
Again.
At least he speaks to
Yes,
you.
he
Yeah.
He
said
will
the
not
city
speak to me.
told him to do this,
Yeah.
to leave the water from their property.
Well, I think some,
Matter of fact, I want to mention something. It's recently, they were doing construction, my neighbor was fixing, what was it?
He put an
Some
addition.
drain. Addition, thank you very
Yeah.
much. To put an addition, and there was a hose, they're digging the water, and they're digging, he had to put the hose in the sewer. Well, that sewer, that's what looks so nicely on paper, doesn't work. It's not connected, it's just a little hole.
Is that what the hole
Yes,
is?
it's not connected, it never was connected.
And there's a big hole.
So this is beautiful on plan, but this is,
No,
none of
it's
this is
not.
working.
Counselor,
Not connected.
I would caution to take responsibility for anything that maybe can't be confirmed. So I mean, I have a hard time understanding how a sewer system that was designed and installed by the city might not be connected to something. No,
A good
I-
example is, he took the hose, he put it into my land, I says, no, you're not putting that in my land, put it right there in that sewer thing. And he says, but why? He says, it's only gonna drain onto the road and go into your land. And I watched him put the hose in there, it filled up and drained into my land. He says, see,
How often have anyone here been on this property? When's the last time anyone's been on the property to take a look at all the damage?
Not too long ago.
It's been a month or two since I last visited Mrs. Stasio's property, maybe less than a month before that. The last time I was generally on Whitefield, going back.
So let's break this down piece by piece, okay? So we have, you said there were two separate things, right? There was the swale in the back that was causing Puffy's property to be damaged. right?
correct.
We also have these two pipes that I think three pipes, I'm sorry. But there's two pipes that we know of for sure, and then there's one mystery pipe, I guess, that we could call it right now.
From Linfield.
From Linwood Street, right? So we have this going on here. Then we also have some damage, some serious like pipe damage because like she was talking about she had to pay $5,000 for it, right? And again, what's the common denominator between all three?
Water,
Well,
water,
the contractor.
sewage,
The
contractor.
Right. Well,
Duffy.
we're just having a conversation, right? And in each of these there's photos, there's there's 12 years worth of, more, if not more, of, you know, water problems and drainage problems and things like that. So we have to figure this out for these people, number one, right? Yep.
Well, one of the things I think.
Hang on 1 minute, please.
So I appreciated actually you know, you said we can still work on this property, we can still do something for them to get this property, you know, to get them to have a house on this property, right? I think that if that's to be done, I think that they need to see, or whoever is gonna help them, whether it's city or not, needs to see these pipes and see exactly what has happened to these pipes over the years. They're literally right here telling you that this contractor did something to make the water go on their property. At least do something to see that it's true. At least to see that it was done and that the water is draining into their property. I mean, at least we have to do that, at least.
If I may.
Yeah.
I think we ought to make a request that we ask every department involved in this situation to go out there and make a list of what is wrong down there. So we know the volume of the problems they got there. I mean, I think wherever you went, you'd have a problem. You have a problem here, the other houses. Let's find out how deep this goes. That's what we gotta find out. And then we can, you know, your department, go out there and, okay, what's the problem there? Mark it all down. Come back to us. Let us know what's going on.
Okay. One of the things I want to comment on, that the swale, which starts from lot 20, which is 100+ feet away from Mrs. Sassio's property, the 10,000 square foot lot. Behind lot 20, I believe you're on lot 17.
I think so.
I believe it is. I think I pulled the deed, 169 Whitefield. Nope, you're lot 18.
I'm 18.
You're lot 18, and I have the deed for lot
just had it there.
17. I pulled some deeds.
Okay.
Between lots 20 and all the way down, the swale, for lack of a better term, is a wet swale. It's always going to, you know, have some amount of water in it because of the wetlands, because of the high groundwater. That swale was put in originally. The easement is not part of the city, so we can't take any machinery back there. It is the responsibility of every single property owner to make sure that they do not fill or impede the swale. So the swale is the responsibility of all the people. We could go back and we could say, you know, based on our judgment, oh, well, property X filled their portion and are creating a problem. But we can't touch that. That's the swale's the easiest thing that we can discuss tonight, because if any of the property owners from 2019, 18 have done anything, or if they bought it and the previous owner did any kind of filling, then it is that, whoever bought that lot, it is their responsibility to go in and fix the swale. The swale, due to high groundwater, because I've been out there numerous times and we've had a lot of conversations this morning about this, will most likely have water or be damp almost, unless we're in a severe drought, the way I understand it, all the time.
They have pools in the back of the.
Right, but it's in their deed. We don't own the swale.
Right.
The swale is the responsibility of every single property owner, and it's actually, it's very explicit in their deed.
Right, but then if we touch it, then we get in trouble if we touch it. If we fix it, we get in trouble if we don't fix it per your code.
We
How
can't.
is
No,
that?
we don't
We-
determine that.
JR, how many debates did we get into already? This has been 3 years with me.
We can't, we're not gonna get
Since
involved in it.
I bought this house, I've been dealing with him over this.
Yeah. So, but the swale's the easiest
So,
part, because
I'm in a
they
no-win
need,
situation.
if any of them have filled or it's changed, they have to reestablish the swale the way it was, originally done. The pipes, we can take a look at the road plans, we can go back out. This is the first I've heard of the pipe from Linfield. We'd need permission to go on our private property. I believe she'll probably grant
Did you
us
say
that.
Linfield or Linwood?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
Linwood. I'm sorry,
Linwood.
Linwood. I keep on saying
Just making
Linfield.
sure.
Whitefield, Linwood.
Yeah, I got you.
We can look at the engineering file and that sort of stuff, JR and myself, and probably, and Paul and John, and we can go look at that. And I can pull all the record plans and see what we have and kind of give you the information. Based on the information I have, there were wetlands already on the site. Has the development around Mrs. Sasio's property been built up? I've been out there, yes. Has it exacerbated it? Yes. The pipes across the street, based on the plans that are shown, are supposed to drain it north, not push it south. If it's pushing it south, then we could look at trying to address that with the developer or talk. We can investigate to find out what's going on, but I don't know what we can.
That last part is actually.
We can
here's-
investigate
here's
and
the
find out
thing,
what's
though.
going on.
Here's the thing, though, and I think the most important part of what Mr. Roth just said is, I know I'm willing, I know Paul, JR, Bill, all willing to step up to the plate, take our own time if need be, to get out there and help determine where the issues are, okay? But what is the most important thing is, as he said, investigate. But we have no case for us as a city. We have no purview, we don't have the right to be able to affect change for you. So at the end of the day, whatever results we could come up with, you would have to take those. And unfortunately, to your point, Buffy, to Council Pelletier's point, you may have to group together and say, look, if these are the problems, we need to address them with the issue or the person that created the issue. In this case, it wasn't the city. Now, I understand, may I just finish my point?
No, it's not an
That's what I
accepted
wanna-
road. We don't own it.
That's what I'm saying. So whether somebody told you, whether it was Mr. Duff or contractor A or contractor X, if they told you the city said do this, they told me to do this, we have no record of it, we have no file for it, we have no proof that we ever instructed the contractor to do any of that.
But you do have a record.
The pipes are shown.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the city stated they needed to be installed.
Okay, but the city approved the pipes.
It's,
And if
according
the
to
city
what-
We're
approves
gonna,
the
we're gonna,
pipes,
we're
they
gonna
have
find
to-
that out.
we're gonna
find
find
that
that
out.
out to find that out.
You assuming where it is.
All right, let's, let's try to, I think we need a motion here.
If it's not your pipes, why can't you just fill them up with cement?
Block 'em.
Block them, then I can remediate that, that'll stop that from happening.
That's not something we could ever
No, we
endorse.
wouldn't even
I mean,
suggest it.
Yeah.
The thing is, if I can get a motion off my colleague here, that we get the departments here to go out there and investigate what is wrong, engineering, sewer department, Mr. Roth, and the DPW. Go out there, see what's going on, and we should send Duffy a letter saying that we are sending out a group of people to investigate what is going on there. And also, I'd like to have answered, through a motion, maybe through my colleague here, that we investigate how he got the right or how he filled up the pond. That's what I'm concerned about as well. We gotta know these things. It's there, they're skating on it, next thing, there's no more. He done what he want, you heard a lot of people there, it's costing him money. He should be responsible and come up and do what he has to do there. He's got a lot of problems, he's gotta straighten it out. And if it's the case where you're gonna take him to court, you guys should get together with your neighbors. She's got a problem, you got a problem, they got a problem, they get them all together. Any lawyer will take that, and that's what you have to do.
I have a
It's the only way you're gonna straighten this out.
I just have a question. When it comes to the specific kind of motion, I wanna say appropriate agencies, but do I need to be very specific about the agencies?
Just say city staff.
City staff, yeah, all right. So I make a motion for city staff to investigate the situation and return back with an appropriate assessment and response.
As well, a letter to Jimmy Duff.
As well as a letter to the contractor involved in the properties.
And if you can sneak in the information about filling the plant.
And also,
The Frederick Street lots,
yeah,
investigate.
I'm thinking it might be 3 separate motions.
I'll put it all in
One
one.
more? Okay. Whereas we also will send a letter to the contractor, and whereas we will also investigate on the
Filling of,
the Frederick Street as well.
all right, that's a start. I mean, we had a good meeting tonight. You would still want to speak?
I have one more question.
All right, go ahead.
So
Oh,
I'm
do you?
able,
Oh, motion, second on motion. All in favor?
Aye.
so my question is, I am able to fix my flooding in my yard. I'm able to fill my flooding doesn't go to your property, just so you know. I'm flooded the other way. There's like a hill, and I slope, and we go into each other, and it just sits there. The two properties, I'm 2 houses from your lot. So them 2 houses between do not flood at all. My neighbor a little bit, but not like me. I was told the city has rights to that easement. That's why we're not allowed to put any permanent standing objects there, and we're not allowed to fill or pretty much do anything with that.
I would suggest that you pull your deed.
I did.
Read the verbiage very well, and I would suggest that, you read that, maybe even have it interpreted by an attorney. Wouldn't cost you all that much, just have him read the deed
It says
and
it.
tell you what your rights are, okay?
Well-
But I would caution that just as maybe your neighbor may have put something there that affected you, if you do something to counteract that, that might affect them, and then you end up, as
You
Bill
can't
said, into
fill.
a civil
So
suit.
what do I do about the flooding? I can't even sit in my yard because I'm infested with frogs in the summertime. Like, what do I do?
I would say, whatever was done that you feel from whether it be your neighbor on the left or your neighbor on the right that is helping to cause a problem in your property, that you're going to inevitably have to go down that civil route, as Mr. Roth had said earlier. I caution you, and obviously I'm not a lawyer, but I would caution you to take any action that may be retaliatory or whatnot.
We all
I would
flood.
suggest getting the proper people involved to deal with that. We can look at it, but I
Right,
would
but-
say.
Yeah, I know JR has looked
Who's
at
the
it,
proper
and many
people to get-
times.
Like, my neighbor can say I caused it, I can say he caused it. We can all point fingers down that whole easement. At the end of the day, none of us are causing it. Over time, the weather creates those bumps back there, and there's nowhere for this water to go. It doesn't matter if we put a shed in or a pool in or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, the weather over the years back there has created this waviness.
Pools and sheds do create problems.
How
I think
if
one,
it's not
one
even
shed
near
got flooded
there?
out and got moved. The swale from 2 above you all the way down
It's not even
needs
next
to
to
be,
there.
probably needs to be reestablished.
So you-
I don't know, I haven't looked at that, and I'm not an engineer, I know JR is an engineer, but, you can't, to establish the swale,
So you
you're
buy
not
a-
going to fill. If you fill, then you basically are pushing that water off on someone else. The swale, and there's a,
I'm not filling anyway. I'm not doing anything to it because I'm not gonna be held responsible later. So that's the issue here. And like I said, we can all point fingers down the whole street, but at the end of the day, the draining over there is the issue. The draining period is the issue. The pipes in the ground are the issue, from the sewerage to the drainage.
the swale
Right,
issue's
listen, we
easy.
can go
The
on
swale
all
issue-
We can go
night.
on
They're
and on
supposed
and
to
on
But,
about
the
this
but
swale
I
all
think
night.
we're heading in the right direction. Let them go check it out. Let Mr. Duff come out and do what he has to do. We have a motion on the floor. Could you read the motion?
So the motion was to have the city staff investigate the issues on Whitefield Street, send a letter to Mr. Duff, and to find out how the pond got filled.
Yeah, motion was made by my colleague. I second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Investigate the issues, covers all that.
All right, I mean, we've come a long way tonight. We've come a long way. It's the beginning. Let's see what happens. I think we put Mr. Duff on notice that there's a problem, there's a big problem. We'll take it from there. Let's see what happens. And, you know, it's gonna move fast. You've been there for a while?
3 years.
We're on a fast track, all right?
Okay. 6-year-old house. It's not even 6 yet.
Yeah.
It'll be 6 in June.
All right, I'd like to,
It's not your fault, honey.
yeah,
It's just-
we have a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'd like to thank everybody at the table.
Thank you.
And we need a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Trot.
Motion to
Trot.
adjourn.
Council.
Need a motion. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Go ahead.
Thank